Hello and welcome to the Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you. I'm your host, Sarah Williams, and today I'm very excited that we're going to be speaking to Jessica Mills, or Dixie as she's also known. Now, Jessica took a thru-hiked, which means that she walked the full length of the Appalachian Trail over in America. But I'm going to let Jessica introduce herself and tell you a little bit more about herself and the hike, and we are going to discuss all sorts. So hi, Jessica.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's great to have you on the podcast. So Jessica, introduce yourself to our listeners and tell everybody just a little bit more about you.
Okay. So my name, as you said, is Jessica, also known as Dixie, because on the Appalachian Trail, you actually end up with a trail name. So we can talk about that a little bit more later, but that's why I'm also Dixie. But yeah, last summer in 2015, I decided to hike the Appalachian Trail. I started on the southern end of it, which is in Springer Mountain, Georgia, and hiked 2,189.2 miles up to Maine, where the trail ends at Mount Katahdin. So it was a pretty crazy journey. But yeah, I'm from Alabama, and which is not on the trail. I feel like a lot of the people that hike the trail actually live in somewhat of a general proximity of the trail. But yeah, that's pretty much what I did.
And it sounds absolutely awesome, because I heard about this. I heard about the Appalachian Trail sort of quite a while ago, and I have this Pinterest board, and whenever I hear about great challenges, I sort of set up a Pinterest board and I start adding pins to it and think, well, maybe I might do that in the future. And I came across, you'd started to put some videos on there, and I was literally like, this is so awesome. But Jessica, almost like take us back a step. Where did the idea come from to undertake this hike? Because it's a huge distance to undertake. It's a massive journey. And yeah, how did that seed get planted for you?
Well, so for me, it was planted when I was about 5 years old. I was at a place on the trail called Newfound Gap. It's on the border of North Carolina and Tennessee. And I was trying to sound out the word Appalachian, because I was learning to read and everything. And so I asked my mom, what does that sign say? And she said, it says Appalachian Trail. And I was like, well, what is that? And she said, it's where people walk this trail from Georgia to Maine. And I said, well, I want to do that. And she said, well, we can't do that today or right now. When you get older, you can do it someday. And so I decided, well, I will. And like anything else, it got put on the back burner for a while. And I had intended maybe to do it after college, but I got offered a job, and with student loans and everything, I really couldn't turn it down. So I worked for a while in a job that I actually really loved. And then I was transferred. Well, I took another position in Colorado, actually in the oil field. And I loved being out there, but I really hated the job. And I decided, life's too short to wait for retirement to enjoy life. So I'm not going to do that anymore. And I ran into a guy. It was actually at a restaurant. I was having a company dinner, and the place we were at was so full. It was just packed, and there was an empty spot at our table, and this guy asked if he could sit there. And so he and I got to small talking, and he was looking to move to the area, and he asked me what I liked about it. And I said, hiking. And I said, I don't know if that's your thing or not. And he said, well, actually, I like to hike a lot. Have you ever heard of the Appalachian Trail? And I was like, have I heard of it? I've been wanting to do it since I was a little girl, and he said, well, I did it last year. And right then I just knew, I'm like, okay, I'm about to quit this job and I'm about to go hike the Appalachian Trail. And that's pretty much when the seed sprouted, so to speak.
I massively believe in that everything does happen for a reason. So the fact that you had that empty seat at the table, this guy sat down and you started talking about the trail, I think that's, how amazing. So you had the seed since you were 5 years old. You're in a job that you didn't like. and you met this guy who reignited that flame and that idea to go after the Appalachian. So what were the steps next? How long did it take before you were out on the trail?
Well, that was I quit the job in at the end of October. So when I met him, it was like August. So I knew I will quit my job in October. And, either at the time I had thought either I would look for another job or whatever. But when I met that guy, I was like, no, I'm going to hike. I knew it. So I don't know, that night I just sat there and I was like, I'm really about to do this. So I just started researching, I started Googling, like literally, I think the first thing I typed was how to plan an Appalachian Trail through hike. And there is kind of a lot of information. And then I don't want to say none at all, but there was nothing that was a straightforward, like, this is how to plan it. These are the things you need to think about step by step. I just had trouble finding something like that. So I just started sifting through the information and, trying to plan it. But it was like, how do I tell everybody I'm about to do this? My friends and family are going to freak out, But so I just, started planning to move back to Alabama, and started trying to save. But of course, I had just quit my job, so it was an interesting time, and I think just trying to sift through all the information and start piecing together some gear, because I had never been on an overnight backpacking trip at all. So yeah, it was crazy.
Wow. So let's just go back a step. So you said, how do you tell everybody, friends and family? I mean, I remember myself, I did a big race called the Marathon des Sables earlier this year. So running across the Sahara Desert. And I can still remember when I'd made the decision. But then the thing which was quite scary is when you have to come out and tell people, yes, I'm going to go run across the Sahara Desert. And for you, yes, I'm going to go and walk over 2,000 miles. I'm going to do this massive hike. And, generally you hope people are going to be supportive, but there's always going to be questions. And are you sure? Is it going to be safe? People are going to come back to you with all of their fears, not your fears, but their fears and things that worry them. So how did those conversations go?
Oh, I mean, you just like hit the nail on the head right there when you said their fears, because I was good. I mean, of course, I had some fear. I mean, it was just unknown, but yeah, just already you have the weight of planning this, and then you have the weight of everybody else and their concern about you. And it's not that people don't love you or they don't want you to achieve your goals or, but they're afraid for you and maybe afraid to, do something like that themselves. So they don't want you to either, but yeah, I just called, my mom, and I was like, Mom, I'm about to hike the Appalachian Trail. And, she was the first person I told, and she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm about to move home and hike the Appalachian Trail. And this was October. So I think that when I told everybody, they were hoping that I was going to, between October and my start date in March, that I was going to change my mind or, get settled in at home and decide not to go. But they should have known better because they all know me and how I am. When I say I'm going to do something, I'm doing it. So yeah, it was really hard. And, some people got mad at me and, are you going to take a gun? You better take a gun and you better go with somebody. And I said, if I waited around to do something with other people, I would never do anything, So a lot of the most awesome things I've done in my life have been alone, unfortunately, but you just shouldn't sit at home just because you're afraid and have nobody to do something with you. So I just told them they were going to have to get over it and started planning anyway.
No, good for you. And I completely agree, because there's been so many instances which I'd love to have done stuff with another person, with a partner, but I found myself, being single and having these opportunities. And do I say no to them because I'm on my own, or do I just have to embrace the fact that actually sometimes you have to do stuff by yourself if you want to go out there and experience these incredible challenges? So you said you'd never been on an overnight hiking or backpacking trip before. Did that change during your preparations, or did you still go out never having slept under a tent?
Well, so I had been like car camping, what I call it, like where you pull to a spot or a state park or something like that, and you throw the tent out and all of your heavy equipment, your grill and your food and, you know, coolers and things like that. But so I had done that, and I had done like a lot of day hikes, you know, where you have a point that you're getting to and you turn around and you come back and you drive home. But I had never put everything that I needed into a backpack and put it on my back and walked, you know, into the woods to not come out for several days. And yes, that stayed true until my first night on the Appalachian Trail. So still to this day, like my first overnight backpacking trip was the Appalachian Trail. So it's pretty crazy. Yeah.
I mean, what was it like sort of, so can you sort of explain why did you set your start date for March?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm cold natured, and in March it is still cold in Georgia. But like January and February are really cold. So I knew I didn't want to start then. But the trail takes approximately 6 months, on average. Some people take a little longer. Some people, you know, go a little faster. So, but I thought, well, the tentative close date for Mount Katahdin in Maine is October 15th. So, you know, if I started April 15th, then that would give me, you know, exactly 6 months. So I wanted to push it back a little bit because I knew I would want to take my time and go into, you know, maybe New York City on the way or different things like that. And just in case I got injured and needed some time to heal, or and I also knew that I had to go home for my brother's graduation. I'm 30, but he was graduating high school. So, so I knew I would have to go home a few days for that. And so I just gave myself a little cushion, and I started March 29th.
March 29th. So what was it like? So you've made the big decision. It's the end of October. You've got March 29th of your start date. Now, for me, I really actually enjoy like the research aspect of things and trying to figure things out or getting myself organized. How long did it take you to do your research and your planning, and how did you come to make those decisions, especially around gear? Because I mean, one of the things that I find is every single person has an opinion. Everybody has a preference, as everybody seems to know what is best. And it's obviously very, very unique and individual. So how did you sort of get around all that and make decisions specifically for you around what equipment that you were going to take? Obviously, because you're going to be carrying everything that you need on this trip. So can you talk us through a little bit more about that?
Yes. So because I had never been, you know, on an overnight backpacking trip, I had no clue about the gear. You know, I had no clue about lightweight tents or, you know, cookware, anything, any of that stuff. So you're right. Everybody is extremely opinionated, and it's really unfortunate because, you know, there are a couple forums and things like that where people just like argue with each other over gear and what's better. And it does depend on the person. It depends on your budget. It depends on, you know, do you care more about comfort or about, you know, things being super lightweight. And so I just, you know, read reviews. I just, you know, I mean, just read and read and read and read, but I really didn't start buying gear until February, which is kind of scary, but, I was so overwhelmed, you know, and I kind of dreaded like making a decision, you know, and doing it. But, I finally, things just kind of started happening. One of my friends asked me, you know, would you like to borrow my hammock? I have a hammock, and I know some people camp in those. And so I was like, sure, you know, I've never slept in a hammock overnight, but I'll try it. It's free, so why not? And I actually, 5 days into the trail, when I hit the first town, I ended up buying a tent. But, but you know, so I had to balance between budget and the weight of gear, because most of your lighter weight gear is more expensive. But there are little ways around that. So for example, stainless steel cook pot is pretty heavy. Whereas a titanium one is very light, but you're looking at a difference in like, you know, $10, $15 and like $100. Well, I wasn't going to spend $100 on a pot, but if you use aluminum, which, you know, they don't really recommend you eat off of aluminum, but I was like, you know what, it's for 6 months. I'll be fine. So, I ended up getting like a little aluminum grease pot for like $8. So there are little corners you can cut and things like that. But again, you have to search, you know.
Absolutely. So you're at the start of your hike. You've got all your gear, you've got all your equipment, you've said your goodbyes. What's it like, when you're getting closer and closer to that start date and taking that first step on that 2,189.2 mile journey?
Oh my gosh, it's like nauseating, honestly. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty nervous. And yeah, on my vlog, the first video is where I'm like, I just stepped foot, onto the approach trail, and you can hear my voice. I'm about to cry because I probably was. Because yeah, it's so hard, you can't, I couldn't anyway, I couldn't sleep for several days, before, and it just felt like this isn't real. Like, this isn't really happening. Am I really doing this? Is this really what I want to do? And you kind of start almost doubting yourself, but it's still exciting. You're excited and happy, but it's just, of course, the thought of like, what if I don't make it? But I'm so stubborn. I knew unless there was some like serious injury, I was going to make it. I was going to make it happen. But, and so, yeah, those first few steps are just like, it's just overwhelming. And I was on there are, it feels like 6 million stairs, on the approach trail when you first start, cause you're going up next to these waterfalls. And I remember climbing the stairs and I was just struggling because, I'd never carried that much weight on my back while hiking. And I was going up those stairs and I stood there like out of breath and I was like, how in the world am I ever going to make it to Maine if I can't even climb some stairs? But, yeah, there are about 600 stairs. So it kind of knocks you in the head to start out with.
And what were those first couple of days like? I mean, I think for me, one of my fears would be sort of the camping out, being alone, the threat of bears. I mean, I think that there's a lot of sort of individual fears that you'd have to come over. What were your specific fears that you had while you were starting on the hike?
Yeah, I think, I really wasn't worried too much about wildlife, to start with, at the beginning. I wasn't really worried about people either. People were very nice, to start with. And there are a lot of people when you start. So even starting alone, there are people. But I think I don't want to say worried about like not fitting in, but I mean, you're just around like all of these new people. And then also the gear, I wasn't familiar with it. So I was like, what if I am not good at setting this hammock up? What if I get wet? I was worried about that a lot, getting wet and my sleeping bag being wet and being a couple days, from a town. And because it was so cold, I mean, the first night it was probably, I think it was in the upper 20s, lower 30s, for us. And so, I mean, it was pretty chilly. So I think my gear, I'd never cooked with my stove before. So I'm sitting there the first night, like, what am I doing? Hopefully I can figure this out, So I think it was just my inexperience was what I was most concerned with.
And what sort of happened over those initial days? So you said it was quite busy. There was lots of people walking. Is that when you first got your trail named Dixie, or did that come later?
Actually, it was within the first, definitely within the first 2 weeks or so. And there was a group of 3 guys that I hiked with for the first few weeks, on and off around them. And they just got to talking about it. And they said, when you're not around, we call you Dixie, because you're from the South and you have a Southern accent. And so we hope that that's okay with you because we don't remember what your real name is. And I was like, that works, So it's kind of like that. Like something will happen where you end up getting your trail name. Like I knew a guy named Perk, because he carried a percolator to make coffee, and just a mountain goat because he could hike like a mountain goat, and there are just the craziest names. But yeah, the people were great, and there are a lot of different skill levels out there. So you've got people who have been backpacking for years, and maybe even folks that are on their second or third through hike, like there was a 72-year-old man that was hiking it for the 3rd time. So you really have people there to kind of help you along. And I was really grateful for that.
Oh God, that's awesome. So I know there must have been, as you were going along, there must have been some challenging situations that you faced. Could you maybe share a few of those challenging situations?
Yes. So there was I guess I would say one of the hardest parts was getting with, a group, and we called ourselves the family because there were 10 of us that were all hiking solo. But we kind of grouped together and it was really fun. But I had to go home for my brother's graduation. So of course they all got ahead. So when I got back on the trail after 5 days, I was like hiking like crazy at night and everything else, trying to catch up with them. And then I ended up in Pennsylvania, having to go home again, because my dog got sick. And that was very, very hard. I had 2 dogs and, had left them at home, being taken care of. And, I found out that one of them just, wasn't really doing well, and it had been going on for a while, and they ended up finding out that she had like a blockage. She had eaten something. And so they went in for surgery, and when they did that, I rushed home, and she made it out of surgery and everything, but it was unsuccessful. And I was about 2 hours out and she passed away. And that was really rough. That was very, very hard because my dogs are like my children to me. So, I stayed home for about a week and dealt with that and buried her and all that. And I cried and cried. And actually at the time I was having a lot of trouble with my feet. I had that plantar fasciitis, which is like the inflammation of your plantar fascia in the bottom of your foot. So it's extremely painful. It feels like lightning bolts going through your feet. And I mean, it was horrible. And so all of that was going on at the same time. And, of course in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to go hike right now. I hurt, like my heart hurts, my feet hurt, but then I realized I'm like, I can be sad and hurting here at home, or I can get back out there on the trail and hike it off. So I put her collar on my pack and I went back to Pennsylvania and kept on going.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry about the loss of your dog. Especially, I know how close you can get with dogs, that they're part of the family at the end of the day, aren't they? So
yes, for sure.
So yeah. Was it quite easy to move between groups, or were there large sections of the trail that you were where you didn't come across very many people and you had sort of alone time and you were by yourself, or was there always people on the trail? Like, is it quite busy?
So at the beginning, of course, it's a little bit busier than later on because, a lot of people are gonna, hike the Appalachian Trail, and then some of them run out of money, or some of them decide this isn't for me, or people get hurt, or, different things happen. So people start kind of dropping out. And, it's about, I think 20% or so that start actually finish. So towards the end, it starts getting pretty thinned out. And of course, because I went home 2 different times, my group was just gone. They were just gone and ahead. And you would think, that it would be real easy to fall in with another group, but it's kind of like changing schools in the middle of high school or something. It's just, you're really used to one crowd, and then you go into another one that's like already formed. And so, I mean, everyone out there is nice, but I don't know. I guess at that point, maybe I was kind of down and out, anyway. So I really enjoyed, my alone time at that point. And that's kind of why I went out and hiked the trail, was to be alone and to figure out what I'm doing, next in my life and all of that. So it kind of allowed me the opportunity to do that, because at the beginning I was having so much fun and, enjoying being around other people. And the last thing I wanted to think about was what I was going to do, when I got off trail. But that second part kind of gave me time to be alone and figure things out. And your mind is a pretty noisy place when you're when you're alone with it. You just don't realize how many distractions there are in everyday life.
No, absolutely. Now you mentioned money, and I would just be really interested to know, like, how much did this all cost you from the gear, or for while you were out walking it? Is there a minimum amount, or roughly how much did you end up spending?
So on gear itself, with the original purchases I made, and then like the different upgrades and adjustments I made while I was out there. And for other people, that would be probably a good bit less if they already are experienced with their gear, but I think the gear total ended up running me about $3,000 to $5,000, somewhere in there. I can't remember exactly, but now while you're on the trail, they always suggest somewhere, I don't know, about $1,000 a month. So if it takes you 6 months, about $6,000. So I think mine was closer to 7, is what I ended up spending. But I was out there for like 6.5 months. So, and now that's not including the trips home, the 2 trips home. So, I mean, it's good to always plan for emergencies too. But I hiked it pretty comfortably. If I wanted to go in town and eat a good meal, I did. And if I wanted to stay somewhere, in a hostel or something like that and shower and do laundry, I did. So you could do it a lot cheaper. You really could. And even on gear, you could probably do it cheaper than what I did. But it depends on your level of, comfort. And there were people who are retired who definitely spent way more because they were, in hotels almost every, 3 to 5 days or so. So with anything else, it's just about what level of comfort you want.
No, absolutely. So when you're on the trail, I mean, I've mentioned sort of the possibility of bears and, the other wildlife. Did you have any run-ins with any wildlife?
Yes. So I saw a lot of different animals, a lot of white-tailed deer, foxes, raccoons, your general things. But yes, I saw 7 black bears. The first one I saw, I'm really glad that I was with a group of people because the area that we were hiking through was closed down to camping. But we were just walking through and we were getting water out of a spring. And the reason the area was shut down for camping was because of an aggressive bear. Well, I didn't realize that we were going to meet that bear, but we did. So we were sitting there getting water, and you could hear it sounded like a man, just like a huge man, just crashing through the woods. And we looked up, and this bear is just walking towards us. And most of the time, bears are kind of like scared of humans. Well, this one wasn't at all. And that should have been a red flag. But again, I hadn't really been around bears that often, so I wasn't used to what their normal behavior was. And so this bear keeps coming closer and closer, and he gets behind a tree. Well, I wanted to see what he was doing, so I kind of like stepped to the side on a rock, but it was kind of a little forward too. And he watched me do that, and I think he thought I was advancing him, but I was just trying to see, okay, what's this bear doing? So when I did that, he kind of looked up, and you're supposed to make yourself appear not necessarily intimidating, but not intimidated, and I kind of crouched down as if I was like talking to a small puppy. And I said, "Hey, darling," like an idiot. I mean, that was not the thing to do. So the bear, to him, I just made myself look like lunch. So he throws his arms up. He kind of like grunts, and he starts charging me. He starts coming towards me, and he takes like 3 bounding running steps, and then he stops, he throws his arms up, and he hisses like a huge cat, like a 200 or 300 pound cat. And so what you're not supposed to do when they run at you is turn around and run. But what did I do? I turned around and I started running. And luckily the group I was with was like, "Stop running," and I'm like, "Oh yeah." And it's like everything I had read about bear safety started coming back to me. And so I turned around, and I had my trekking poles in my hand. So I held them up, and luckily the group I was with, loved me enough to come and stand with me. So they kind of, crowded around me, and we all held our arms up. And, I guess the bear decided he didn't want to fight 6 or 7 people, so he just kind of sat down, and I mean, you could see the hair raised up on his back. He was that close. And, so he finally just kind of wandered off, and I never made that mistake again. So for the other 6 bears I saw, it was by myself, and I handled it like a champ. So
good for you. Oh my goodness. I'm just sitting there thinking, oh my God, black bear.
Yeah, it could have been bad. It really could have been bad, but I was lucky, and I didn't make that mistake again. And there were snakes. There were a lot of snakes. I only saw one poisonous one the whole time, but I feel like I'm in the minority on that. There were a lot of people who saw more than that. So
with the walking, like, do you get sort of like trail legs as such? So I mean, with the mileage that you started out, did you have a set plan that yes, you were going to walk, 15, 13 miles or however many kilometers each day? Or were you quite relaxed about your distances? Or how did you sort of plan that and yeah.
Right. So what I would recommend to anyone is like, don't really plan. You do get trail legs. It happens naturally. You know, a lot of people are like, well, do I need to physically train? And I'm like, there's no way you can physically train to hike that many miles every single day for 6 months unless you just go do it, you know? So you have to be in tune with your body. You've got to listen to your body. So especially when you first start out, because you don't know what normal hurt is because you're always sore, it feels like, but you know what normal sore and pain is versus like there's something wrong. But, you know, at the beginning, it's kind of hard to tell. So if you feel tired and you feel, you know, like in pain, you stop. So at the beginning, I was only doing about, 8 miles or so a day. And then I finally got to where I was doing 10 and then 12. And I started noticing, you know, at the end of the day, I just wouldn't be as tired or as sore, you know, so the next day I would do a little bit more. And I ended up, I would say on average, it was anywhere from like, 17 to 20 miles, you know, you could say, ended up being kind of the norm after a while. Of course, there are sections of trail that are a lot harder. So like the White Mountains in New Hampshire and in Maine, you're probably not going to do that because the terrain is just so rocky and it's like hand over hand climbing and things like that. But especially like in Virginia, I mean, you start flying, and the most I ever did in a day was like 33 miles. But yeah, it just happens naturally. You just have to know not to push yourself and not to drive yourself crazy over calculating, like, how am I going to do 2,200 miles in 6 months? You know, you can't think about it. It'll happen. It'll just happen.
So it's all about sometimes breaking these massive challenges down into the smaller chunks. Now, I think I mentioned at the start, like how I first sort of came across you was actually through YouTube and some of the vlogs that you've been doing, and you actually vlog quite a lot of your journey. And I'd just be really interested in how you managed to vlog and blog while you were on the trail. Did you take a laptop? Did you do it all through your phone? Did you have somebody at home helping you out? How did you manage to maintain that level of engagement?
Right. So before I left, I decided I'm going to keep a blog because I felt like, you know, I always keep like a written journal, but I wanted to be able to share my experiences through the blog and post pictures and not just, you know, post huge statuses on Facebook all the time. So I decided to set up the blog. Well, right before I left, a friend from college said, you know, have you thought about doing a vlog? And I was like, what is a vlog? And she said, well, it's a video log. And I said, well, I guess I can do that, you know? And so what we decided was I would video, and then when I would get to town, and connected to Wi-Fi, I would send or upload the files into the Dropbox app. And so I downloaded that on my phone, and I filmed everything on my phone. I have an iPhone 6, but so I would upload the videos to that, and then she would go, you know, to Dropbox.com, download them to her computer, and then create the videos. So she actually did the editing and posting them on YouTube. And and then as far as the blogging, I could, even though I didn't have service on the trail, I had the WordPress app on my phone. So I could like type and kind of do a little bit of that on the trail. I didn't do a whole lot because I was trying to conserve my battery. But whenever I would get to town, you know, I would kind of, especially if I stayed somewhere, I would kick my feet up, you know, and, and just kind of rest and put into words, you know, maybe the last section of trail I had been on or something like that.
That is absolutely awesome. No, I'm super impressed that how you kept everybody updated, which is absolutely fantastic. Now, a bit of a random question, which I'd be interested in, is the water. So what do you do about water when you're hiking? Because I just know from, you know, the amount of water that I need to consume, whether it's like 3 or 4 liters a day, maybe more when it's really, really hot and when you've been working out. And obviously carrying that weight in water is so heavy. So how did you manage it along the trail?
Right. So at first I was really nervous about that. And my first day I started out, it was cold, and I started out with 2 liters, which was way more than I needed. I finally got to where I only carried about 1 liter at a time. And there's so much water on the Appalachian Trail. I mean, you're really lucky. I mean, every 3 to 5 miles, you're going to come across water for the most part. Now, there are some sections that are a little more dry, but so at first I had a Sawyer filter, is what it's called, a Sawyer squeeze. And then I ended up going to a platypus gravity filter. So just a filter, but there are, chemical treatments, there are drops that you can use. Or if you wanted to, you could just boil the water. I don't have the patience for that. So, I just carried the filter. And then, it kind of gives you a break anyway. It's nice to stop and sit there by the water and filter it and, maybe splash around in it a little bit, cool yourself off and just take your pack off. So it's really not bad. There are some people who prefer to carry more weight than to stop and filter. But again, it's just personal preference,
Absolutely. So looking back over the trail, what do you think you learned the most about yourself from going on this experience and doing this through hike?
I think, that I've learned I can do whatever I want to do. Anything that I set my mind to or any goal that I set for myself and I'm serious about it, I can make it happen. Because there were a lot of hard days on the trail, and it's, you kind of learn to get over that need for instant gratification. I mean, you have small rewards every day, a beautiful view or something like that. But the days where you're just, maybe 3 days in a row walking in cold rain, I mean, you start questioning, like, I wanted to do this, mm-hmm. but it's just, you've challenged yourself and I don't know, it just kind of shows you what you're made of, So I think now I've come away with this mindset of like, if I can do that, I can do anything, So, and just kind of like a reboot in nature to clear your mind and to, kind of reflect on life and what you've done so far and what you want to do in the future and things like that. No,
absolutely. So talk us about coming to the end of the trail. I mean, even, getting past 2,000 miles and only having, say, 200 miles to go. But when you've got the final 20 miles, the final 2 miles, and you can see the end and finish, what was that like?
Oh, man, I don't even know how to describe it. I just got chill bumps thinking about it, but it's, it's funny you mentioned, cross a mile 2,000, even like crossing into Maine, you're like, yeah, I'm in Maine because, for the whole trail, everybody asks you, where are you heading? Cause they think maybe you're out on a week trip and the whole time you're like, I'm going to Maine. And you finally get there and then you're like, oh, I still have like 200 or 300 miles left. And even though that doesn't seem like much after, you think about the whole length of the trail, I mean, it is, it feels like a lot. And I was so ready to be done. But yeah, the last like 30 miles or the last 20 miles. And then when you could finally see Mount Katahdin, I mean, it was almost like I felt at the beginning. It was almost that like butterfly, like nauseating kind of, nervousness of like, I'm almost here, and I can see the end in sight, but you almost don't believe it. It's sort of surreal, it's like, here it really is. And then when you're like 100 yards, when you can see the final sign ahead of you and you're going up to like put your hand on it and touch it. I mean, I started tearing up. It was like, I don't know. It was just a strange feeling. Like you really couldn't believe that moment was there. The moment you had worked for so many days and it was finally happening. So it was pretty awesome.
Well, congratulations, an amazing achievement. What was it like after that? Like, because you finished this incredible challenge, and what was the next steps for you?
Well, I came away feeling very encouraged and very ready to tackle anything, just very driven. I had several thoughts in mind of what I would want to do after the trail. One of them was start a little microgreens business. And so I kind of, I just started channeling all this energy, that I had from the trail into that. But after a while, I don't want to say you go through like a mini depression, but it's almost like you're just so high and then you crash because you're back in like normal everyday life. And you kind of come home to, friends and family who maybe are doing the same thing, that they were doing before you left, and so it's like kind of nothing really has changed at home, but you have changed so much in your perspective on things, and you almost feel like lonely. I mean, just kind of secluded, even though you're around all these people you love and care about. It's just a very strange feeling because nobody except maybe the people who you hiked with can understand how you feel, and your the changes in your life and your perspective and things like that. So I don't know. It's a very strange feeling.
So how did you, what did you continue with that business, or what did you decide to do?
Well, so I did, and I've been doing the farmers markets, and it was really great to have something like that to grasp onto because I'd never started a business before. I didn't know anything about it, But so I kept, I also kept doing the vlogs and things like that, and I came to this turning point where I was like, okay, I'm not married, I don't have children still, I'm 30. Why am I trying to tie myself here? Why it's still time to adventure, and that's what I decided. So I've kind of made this turn towards, I want to hike the Pacific Crest Trail next year. So I have decided, I'm going to kind of put all my eggs in that basket and go for it and try to make it happen. While I can. And I would really like to achieve what they call the Triple Crown of hiking, which is the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and then the Continental Divide Trail. So I'm 1/3 of the way there. So might as well keep going.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. Now, Dixie, you have actually written a book, Take a Thru-hike. Do you just want to share with people where they can find the book and what it contains and why they should buy it?
Yes, absolutely. So, when I got back, I started talking to different groups and Boy Scout groups, and people started emailing me and asking me questions about preparing to hike the Appalachian Trail. I want to do it next year. How do I do this, or what do I do for this? And so after I started answering several questions or the same question several times, I decided I'm gonna create an ebook that's kind of a how-to guide for preparing, because I wish that I had that while I was preparing. So I decided to kind of go over all of the topics that you should really be concerned about when you're prepping. And it is called Take a Thru-hike, and it's available on Amazon. It's in the Kindle form. And yeah, if you just search Take a Thru-hike, THRU-HIKE, it should pop up. And then also on my blog, I have it on there, and the blog is homemadewanderlust.com. So that's where you can find it. And then also, if you want to see the YouTube videos, you can just type on YouTube Homemade Wanderlust and 2 separate words, and it'll pop up there also. And I do now, before it was like all hiking videos, and now I try to do like informational things to help other people get involved in hiking, because even if you can't do the whole Appalachian Trail, you can do sections of it, or hiking and backpacking where you are, and all of it's kind of carries over. I mean, picking a pack for any trail is, pretty similar, and tent and, different things like that, kind of go with any trail. So.
Absolutely. And I have to say, the videos are so useful. You're just so open and honest about all the different situations and provide loads of great advice, which is fantastic. I will be including all of the links to Take a Thru-hike, to Jessica's book on Amazon, as well as to her blog, Homemade Wanderlust. So all the links will be in the show notes, available at toughgirlchallenges.com. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on the Tough Girl podcast and sharing your awesome journey and providing so much advice and tips. I think you'll have inspired so many more people to pick a backpack and go hiking, and best of luck with the Triple Crown. I have no doubt that you will achieve it.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it, and I've enjoyed talking with you.
Hi tribe, how are you all doing? I hope we are having a fantastic week wherever you are and whatever you are doing. So I just come back from Base Camp Festival, which was absolutely amazing. So many incredible speakers. And I interviewed Belinda Kirk a while ago, and she's from Explorers Connect, and they're the people behind Base Camp. So go and check it out. It was absolutely fantastic. The weather wasn't great, but to be fair, it's not sometimes about the weather. It's actually about the people you meet. So I had Ellen from the tribe there. So thank you, Ellen Percy, for coming along. That was awesome. Also bumped into Heather and Philippa. Absolutely amazing. We're just chatting randomly at the bar. And I can't remember if it was Heather or Philippa who said, "Oh, I recognize your voice. I listened to your podcast." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, that's so exciting." And then she went on to say that actually, because of the podcast, she'd been inspired to sign up for a half marathon, which is absolutely brilliant. And why I do the podcast, to motivate and inspire you guys to go after your dreams, to go after your goals, and to challenge yourself, to push yourself further and to do the things that you don't think you could do. I really hope you enjoyed that episode with Dixie. Fantastic to hear all about her thru-hike challenge. It's definitely something that I've been looking at in more detail. It does really, really sort of intrigue me. As I said, I've got a Pinterest board as well, and there's loads of different boards about different challenges. So if you're stuck and you need an idea, go and check out the Pinterest page. Talking of festivals, in October, there is going to be the Women in Adventure Expo, which is held down in Bristol on the 8th of October. I'm going to be attending. I'm not one of the speakers, but I will be going, and it's going to be awesome. There's going to be so many incredible speakers from, I'm going to forget them all now, but people like Anna McNuff will be there. Last year they had Felicity, I've forgotten her surname as well, but like Anne Daniels, just loads of female explorers, adventurers, ultra runners, women who are just going out there. It's incredibly inspirational. I thoroughly enjoyed it last year, so really, really excited about this year. Tickets are £35 and you can get them from the website. And in other news, later on October the 21st to the 23rd, there is the Yestival, which I'm actually going to be a speaker at, which is awesome. I'm so excited. I'm really, really looking forward to it. Yestival is just this, it's just got this amazing attitude. It's all about saying yes to things. It's about embracing the unknown. It's about getting outside of your comfort zone. And Emma Timmis is going to be a speaker. Anna McNuff is going to be a speaker. So there's going to be loads of awesome men and women going along. It's camping, it's outdoors, it's all fully inclusive in the ticket price. So go and check it out, Yestival. And I'll also be including all of the links to Yestival Women in Adventure Expo in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com. Just want to do a big shout out actually to Amy Hughes. Now, Amy this week has just been running on a treadmill trying to break a world record. So her goal was to run, she had one treadmill, 7 days, trying to break 517 miles, which she did. So she ended up running 520 miles. I popped down to the Trafford Centre to see her. And to be honest, I got so emotional. It's just seeing somebody you really care about going through this much pain and seeing that determination and that focus to just push on through. And it wasn't physical anymore for her. It was so mental, and it was just incredible to watch. So do go and check out Amy out. Her foundation, the 53 Foundation, is all about raising money for disabled children and about encouraging them to get active and to get fit. So if you can support her, please do go and support her. I'm going to try and get her on for a Tough Girl Extra podcast so we can find out more about what it was like to be in the Trafford Centre in Manchester, running on a treadmill for 7 days. And she was running for up to 15, 16 hours a day, having 3 or 4 hours sleep and getting back on the treadmill. I don't know if you've ever been on a treadmill for even sort of 30 minutes. It's incredibly hard going. So incredible to watch. So I popped down to go and see her and actually ran next to her for a little bit, just offering a tiny bit of support. But that was really, really awesome. Anyway, have a fantastic week. It's always great to hear from you guys. So please do tweet me if you're enjoying listening to the episodes. My Twitter handle is @_tough_girl. Big shout out to all of my sponsors. Thank you so much for supporting me through Patreon. I really, really appreciate it. I could not do this without you. So each and every one of you, thank you so much. And I will be with you next Tuesday for another awesome episode of the Tough Girl Podcast. Make sure you subscribe. That way you are never going to miss out on any of the future episodes that we come out and all the extra bonus episodes which are coming out through Tough Girl Extra. Anyway, take care and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.